Welcome to Iraqi Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the Iraqi dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Today we're going to take a closer look at an interesting development being discussed across the Iraqi press and political circles. In recent days, there has been noticeable chatter in Iraqi media about the possibility of Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani securing a second term in office. While nothing has been formally confirmed, the tone of the coverage in several outlets suggests that parts of the political landscape in Iraq may already be signaling approval for the idea. For observers of Iraq's economy, and especially for those who follow developments related to the Iraqi dinar, this type of political conversation can carry broader implications. To understand why this discussion matters, it is important to look at the relationship between political stability and economic confidence. In many emerging economies, and particularly in countries that have undergone years of political restructuring like Iraq, continuity in leadership can influence how investors, international partners, and financial institutions view the country's economic direction. When media discussions begin to hint at a potential second term for a sitting prime minister, it often reflects at least some level of satisfaction among political blocs or power brokers with the current trajectory. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani came into office in late 2022, following a prolonged political deadlock in Iraq's parliament. At that time, the formation of a government was viewed as a necessary step to restore administrative stability after months of uncertainty. Since taking office, Sudani's administration has focused on a number of economic initiatives, including public spending programs, infrastructure investments, and efforts aimed at improving government services. For analysts who follow Iraq's fiscal environment, the broader question is not simply whether Sudani will pursue a second term, but what the current discussions reveal about the balance of power within Iraq's political system. Iraqi governments are formed through complex alliances among political parties and parliamentary blocs. If the press is already discussing a potential continuation of Sudani's leadership, it could suggest that some of those alliances remain relatively stable. Political stability, even when it appears subtle or gradual, can have a meaningful impact on economic planning. Governments that are expected to remain in power for longer periods are often better positioned to implement multi-year economic reforms. For Iraq, this could include ongoing efforts to diversify the economy beyond oil, improve financial transparency, and strengthen institutions that manage public funds. Another important aspect of the conversation relates to how international partners interpret these signals. Countries that cooperate with Iraq economically, along with organizations such as the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, often look for political continuity when evaluating long-term programs or financial partnerships. When a government appears stable and capable of continuing its policies, external institutions may feel more confident supporting economic initiatives or technical reforms. For followers of the Iraqi dinar, the connection between these political developments and currency discussions is often a topic of interest. It is important to approach that connection with a realistic perspective. Exchange rates are influenced by a wide range of economic factors, including fiscal policy, monetary policy, foreign reserves, inflation levels, and trade balances. Political stability alone does not determine the value of a currency, but it can create an environment that allows financial institutions to operate more predictably. The central bank plays a key role in managing Iraq's monetary policy. The Central Bank of Iraq oversees currency stability, foreign currency reserves, and the country's exchange rate framework. For any significant monetary adjustments to occur, the central bank would typically evaluate economic fundamentals rather than political speculation alone. That is why analysts often caution against drawing immediate conclusions about the Iraqi dinar based solely on political headlines. However, what political stability can do is provide the foundation for long-term reforms that support currency confidence. For example, if a government is able to maintain consistent fiscal policies, improve tax collection systems, and reduce corruption within state institutions, those reforms can gradually strengthen the country's economic outlook. Over time, such improvements may influence how international markets view the stability of the national currency. Another dimension of the current discussion involves Iraq's broader economic priorities. Over the past several years, Iraqi leaders have repeatedly emphasized the need to diversify the economy beyond oil revenues. Oil remains the backbone of Iraq's public finances, but reliance on a single commodity can create volatility when global energy prices fluctuate. A government that remains in power for an extended period may have greater capacity to pursue diversification projects in sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, logistics, and technology. In recent policy discussions, Iraqi officials have also focused on improving infrastructure and public services. Investments in electricity, transportation, housing, and digital systems are often seen as essential steps toward modernizing the economy. If Sudanese administration were to continue into a second term, some analysts believe these programs could gain additional momentum simply because the leadership team would already be familiar with the policy framework and ongoing projects. At the same time, it is important to recognize that political discussions about future leadership can also reflect strategic positioning by political factions. In parliamentary systems like Iraq's, parties often test public reactions through media commentary before formal decisions are made. Press speculation about a second term does not necessarily mean the outcome is guaranteed. Elections, coalition negotiations, and parliamentary dynamics will ultimately determine who leads the government in the future. For the Iraqi Dinar community, this is an important reminder that political narratives should always be interpreted carefully. The value of a currency is typically determined through economic performance and monetary policy rather than speculation about individual leaders. While leadership continuity can support economic stability, it is only one piece of a much larger financial puzzle. Looking at the short-term implications, the current media chatter may signal that Iraq's political environment is relatively calm compared with earlier periods of intense rivalry or governmental stalemate. A calmer political climate can be positive for economic activity because it reduces uncertainty for businesses and investors. Companies operating in Iraq often pay close attention to political developments when deciding whether to expand operations, invest in infrastructure, or form partnerships with local firms. A stable political environment can also support public spending programs and development projects. When government ministries operate under consistent leadership, they are often able to plan budgets more effectively and coordinate long-term initiatives. This can lead to gradual improvements in employment opportunities, public services, and economic productivity. From a longer-term perspective, discussions about Sudanese potential second term may indicate that some political actors believe the current government's economic policies are producing acceptable results. If that perception continues, it could contribute to a broader narrative of stability within Iraq's governance structure. That type of narrative can be important for international financial markets. Countries seeking foreign investment or economic partnerships often benefit when investors perceive a predictable policy environment. Infrastructure development, energy cooperation, and trade agreements are easier to negotiate when leadership changes are not expected to disrupt the direction of economic policy. Another factor worth considering is Iraq's ongoing effort to modernize its financial systems. Over the past several years, authorities have taken steps to strengthen banking regulations, improve compliance with international financial standards, and expand electronic payment systems. These reforms are often gradual and require sustained cooperation between government agencies and financial institutions. If a government remains in power long enough to see these reforms through multiple phases, the long-term impact could be significant. Modernized banking systems can improve transparency, attract foreign investment, and support economic growth. Over time, stronger financial infrastructure can also reinforce confidence in the national currency. For observers of the Iraqi dinar, it is useful to focus on these underlying structural developments rather than isolated headlines. Political continuity can create opportunities for reform, But the real drivers of currency strength typically involve economic fundamentals such as productivity, fiscal discipline, and monetary stability. Another aspect to watch is how Iraqi policymakers balance public spending with fiscal responsibility. Oil revenues provide significant resources for government programs, but fluctuations in global energy prices can create budget pressures. A stable administration may have greater capacity to plan for these cycles by building financial buffers or adjusting spending priorities when necessary. Economic diversification will likely remain one of the most important long-term challenges for Iraq. Reducing dependence on oil requires investment in education, infrastructure, technology, and private sector development. These efforts often take many years to produce visible results, which is why consistent leadership can sometimes help maintain momentum. At the same time, Iraq's political system ensures that power is distributed among multiple parties and institutions. Even if Soudani were to pursue a second term, he would still need the support of parliamentary blocs and coalition partners to implement major reforms. This dynamic means that policy outcomes depend not only on one leader, but on the broader political consensus within the government. For viewers who closely follow Iraqi Dinar developments, the key takeaway from the current media chatter is that it reflects ongoing political discussions rather than confirmed policy changes. It highlights how Iraqi media and political actors are beginning to think about the future of the country's leadership and economic direction. In the short term, this conversation may simply indicate that the current administration has managed to maintain a degree of political support among key factions. In the longer term, the real significance will depend on whether Iraq continues to strengthen its economic institutions, diversify its economy, and maintain fiscal stability. As always, it is important to approach currency-related discussions with a balanced and realistic perspective. The Iraqi dinar, like any national currency, is influenced by complex economic forces that evolve over time. Political developments are one factor among many, and they should be evaluated alongside broader financial indicators. For analysts and observers alike, the most constructive approach is to monitor official policy announcements, economic data, and central bank decisions. These sources provide a clearer picture of the direction Iraq's financial system is taking. The discussion surrounding Mohammed Shia al-Sudani and the possibility of a second term will likely continue to evolve as Iraq moves closer to future electoral cycles and political negotiations. Media commentary may shift as alliances change and as political leaders position themselves for upcoming developments. What remains clear is that Iraq's economic progress depends on steady governance, institutional reform, and long-term planning. Whether under Soudani or another leader, these factors will ultimately shape the country's financial outlook and the stability of its currency. If you want to stay informed with responsible and factual updates about the Iraqi dinar and Iraq's evolving economy, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay connected for future analysis. And as always, please remember that this content is provided for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.